adults think they're not creative, but children do. That's true, isn't it? Broadly speaking. In fact, I want to give you a quick test, if I could. Well, I'm going to. So, how creative do you think you are, personally? I mean, if you would, think of that on a 10-point scale, with 10 at the top. Okay? It's important to know that 10 is the top. And where would you put yourself on a scale of 1 to 10? While you're thinking about that, have a think about this. How intelligent are you on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 at the top? Now, I'm going to ask you to put your hands up. You don't have to. You can say, I'm sorry, I did not come to Zeitgeist for this type of thing. I'm a grown-up. You put your hand up, you might think. But assuming you're willing to, let me just give you an assurance that if you do put your hands up, there are no social consequences. I mean, for me. I mean, it could be social death for you, for all I know. But what I mean is, I'm not going to drag anybody up here and ask you to demonstrate anything. It's purely a straw poll for the purpose of conversation. So with that caveat in mind, would you put your hands up if you give yourselves 10 for creativity? Was that a vote or a scratch? All right, 1, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Where was the average? What do you think of that? Yeah, I'd say, yeah. How about intelligence? Now, I know a certain social modesty comes into play here, but this is Zeitgeist, so get over it, you know. So, how about 10? Any 10s for intelligence? No? 9? Thank you. 2 at the back, thank you. Actually, you can go now, if you like. Really, we're just wasting your time, honestly, but... 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. It's getting tense, isn't it? 2. Any 2s? Okay. I never do 1, by the way. If you've got 1, you're not following this anyway, are you, to be honest? So... Where was the top of that curve, would you think, in intelligence? About 7 again? Okay. 8, okay. All right. One last question. Last time you have to put your hands up. Put your hands up if you gave yourself different marks for intelligence or creativity. Okay. Now, the reason I ask you this is, I mean, I think you're all wrong, by the way. Yeah, obviously, apart from the 2 9s. Obviously, I mean, never argue with a 9, is my view. But the reason I say it is that I think most people operate on a very limited conception of creativity and of intelligence. So my question to you is, what were you thinking of when you gave yourself the mark? When you decided you could give a number for creativity, what was in your mind? When you gave yourself a number for intelligence, what was it you were thinking of? You see, my experience of it is that people operate on all kinds of misconceptions about creativity. I think it's why that last conversation was so important. They think it's all about the arts. Well, the arts are terribly important, but it's not just about the arts. They think it's about special people. It's really not. I mean, if you're a human being, it comes with a kit. You know, you are born with tremendous creative capacities. The trouble is that creativity is a bit like literacy. You may have an aptitude for it, but never develop the abilities that are required to exercise it. And that, to me, is a big fault of our education system. And the third misconception is there's nothing you can do about it. You're creative or you're not, and that's the end of it. And I believe there's a great deal you can do to make yourselves more creative. The whole theme of this conference is about linking together these two worlds, or this session, the inner world and the outer world. And I believe that our education systems currently are failing to keep pace with the developments in the external world, which are moving with a tremendous speed and depth of change. And they have never been good at connecting with our inner world. That very many people go through their education having no real sense of what lies deep within them. I'm convinced of this, that we're all born with tremendous natural talents, but very few of us actually get to tap into them, to tap into the depth of them. Just on this external world, by the way, I mean, I published a book 10 years ago called Out of Our Minds, Learning to be Creative. And I was asked if I would like to make any changes to it last year. We're bringing out a new edition. The publisher said, you're going to do a 10th anniversary edition, would you like to make any changes? Well, it seemed to me improbable, frankly, that it could be improved in any way. It was, after all, a masterwork, that I had written myself. But I decided under some pressure I'd make a few changes possible. I had in mind a weekend with a spell check, and a bottle of Burgundy. Yeah, that was the plan. I actually rewrote the entire book from start to finish. I don't think there's a single word unchanged in the entire book. And the reason is that so much has happened in 10 years. Just in 10 years. I mean, Google is responsible for quite a bit of this, I think. But 10 years ago, there were no smartphones, there were no iPads, no iPods. I know that's not a Google idea. There were no social media. I mean, Alison talked about interviewing Zuckerberg here when it was just a faint idea in his head. There was no Twitter 10 years ago, was there? I mean, 10 years ago, people didn't tweet, did they? I mean, if they did, they were discouraged, weren't they? People would say, what was that? And do you mind not doing that again? We're trying to eat in here. If you have to tweet, go outside and do it. But now, if you're not tweeting on a regular basis, if you haven't tweeted this morning, you feel socially inadequate. I mean, this is just in the space of 10 years. So we know the external world is changing with a fantastic rate and profundity. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to rewrite the book. By the way, I rewrote the book on Microsoft Word.